Check 1, 2. Ready to begin.
Make sure everybody online.
Oh, I think I went to.
Okay, so, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the, special ed, task force meeting this morning. It's a short one, 9 to 10:30. But I felt it was really important for us to touch base. I, do apologize, because I know that I had to cancel a few of these meetings over the last months, either because my husband was very ill or I had back surgery, and I feel like I need to just apologize to you because I think we probably would have gotten a whole lot further, a lot faster, but it is what it is, and we'll move forward. And I also want to thank all of you for your support and your outpouring during this time. It's been a very tough time, but you know, work and doing this kind of work really does help to move me out of grief and into, you know, let's get this done and let's benefit our kids. So with that said, I want to thank everyone, along with Andy. We had 11 people who filled out the rating sheet on from a 1 to 5 in terms of the consensus of the committee on what the findings would be. And we all agreed in the beginning of this process to have this group operate by consensus, correct? So in my book, anything here that was filled out that's a 5 does not move forward as a finding of the committee. So I'll give you a moment just to look through this document, which thank you, Dawn. She put it together yesterday after everything came in. The other thing I want to say to you is, and I made nothing negative to either Andy or Jason. Andy and Jason's recommendations came from one individual person on each one. I think we have to give priority to our subcommittees, which Andy and I put together, and those subcommittees came forward with what they believe to be their findings for their group. So I want to look through those first and make sure there's agreement on what those findings are. I haven't had much time to peruse this either since I got it this morning. So let's just take a few minutes to look at that. The eligibility subcommittee are all 1s and 2s. There is in the funding subcommittee findings, there is 1 5, which we can go back and look at.
Fran, I'm sorry, how are you defining a 3? Are 3 is just?
3 is,
I know, I'm sorry.
a 3 is more information is needed, so we can go through that as well. In the, yeah, the eligibility and the funding and
Services.
the, I don't know, where's the,
Services is right on the top of the next one, the services.
oh, I see, the services, yes,
The no punch.
yeah,
And can
yeah.
I just say that when I realized that this was an old document, I went back to our latest version that Andy, I think, sent out yesterday.
Well, it's been the same report.
Yeah.
And
but
they
I
should give
used
comments.
A little differently in this latest report. So I stopped doing this document and started highlighting the findings in this latest Google Doc. Now, it could have changed after I looked at it yesterday at whatever, 9:30 or whatever. But they are worded a little differently. This honestly felt a little bit like we were going backwards because this was from the beginning and we had all moved to this. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, but I don't know, what do you think? I mean, this I thought was were the findings of the committee that they sent forward, no?
They were, and then I think once they got into the report,
Yeah.
Yeah, we.
They were-
Well, we did some more.
Wordsmith
But-
a little bit. We did.
I think where this maybe will be helpful is the elimination of
Yeah.
things that are 4s and 5s, just cross out of the report. And then we
Yeah.
can potentially wordsmith the report on the findings that have made it in, that we're in agreement with.
So some of, like that 5, I'm especially attentive to that 5 under funding, that was already eliminated from the report. You see that 5, the last page on the
The
5.
charges vary.
Yeah.
Right, that had already been eliminated from the
approximate.
report. That, you know, in this version.
Okay.
My concern about that, and a lot of these things, is we're making assertions, and we have no evidence. Well, that one, we have absolutely no evidence on,
Right, right,
except people's perceptions.
right.
So anyway, it's a 5. I'm gonna push it a little bit quicker here. And I agree with you, Karen, that, you know, here's what I envision. I don't know where Andy is, but I envision that we will go through this today. It's a short meeting. We will knock out the ones that are, 5s. And if there are 4s and 3s, we'll talk more about those. The 1s and 2s will move forward. Andy, because he's been very gracious about this, will send a new draft report with the findings that we wish to move forward. You will all have a chance to weigh in on that draft report. But for me, it's a way of getting out the things that the whole committee doesn't agree with, so that we can begin to move forward. And then you can all take a look at how it's wordsmithed and everything else in a draft report.
Yeah,
I'm just concerned about time. I would like to get this out in the next week or so. I mean, I'm glad to read.
Could we-
Why does it need to be out in the next week or so?
I don't know whether you've been at all these education committee meetings, but Jeff keeps on saying that he wants a report from us and that he wants a hearing with us next week. And not next month, next month.
Listen, they have reports that haven't been put out for years.
Yeah.
This report took 2 years to even meet. I think getting it right is better than getting it fast.
I want it right. Andy,
Not that impact legislation.
If
so
we
that-
anyway,
Not
there you
not
go.
the session, though.
Yeah, so,
I like it right. I don't think we're that far.
Oh, I don't think we are either.
No.
I think it's, a matter of eliminating some stuff in the draft report and then, fighting over its wording.
yeah, would it be appropriate if after we, got the most updated draft, if the subcommittees then met and read through their subcommittee lens, like, okay, we're focused on,
See, that's my problem. I get this, I have this draft report, I have all these comments on
that's
here.
what I mean.
And
So if
I don't know where
that-
everybody agrees with these comments and, I'm not just going to.
That's why I meant if we did it by, that way you're getting, we have 3, I don't know,
And I do think it's too large for,
yeah,
to do it as a whole.
yeah, that's what I was thinking, if you. if we
Well, so I'm not opposed to.
Well, why don't we do that? Why don't we have the 3 subcommittee chairs, eligibility, services and funding, take a look at the draft report and after we get through today, and then move it forward from there.
That way you're getting 3 groups representative of everybody, but in a smaller subset.
Well, so my question is, am I redrafting this before the subcommittees look at it, or are you just taking it as it is now? And then each subcommittee is working on the draft as it is now, with the comments that are in the margin.
I think we work on the, go ahead. Me, I don't know, Valerie, go ahead.
Well, I like the latter one, because it's less work for me.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, it makes sense to look at what's already in there with the comments, because those comments reflect everyone's
Right,
opinion.
that's what I was gonna say.
And the other point about that is not everybody has commented, and so somebody who hasn't commented, do so quickly.
Correct.
Well.
Hi, excuse me. Can you just tell us what you're working off of? I don't know. I know you have a copy in front of you.
I'm
but-
sorry, we're working off of this document.
The rest of the task force have that.
Oh,
You
yeah. they
have
don't
that
it.
one?
Yeah, we'll email it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, here's what I envision. What I want to make sure of is I think Andy and I are both strong personalities. And we can come across as having our agenda. And I just want to be sure that every member of this task force feels they've had a voice in the findings of the task force. This is not my committee and it's not Andy's committee. And I want to be sure that that is what moves forward. And so whatever way we do that is really important to me. That's number one. Number two, I refuse to make pablum recommendations. I don't want to co-chair a committee, a special ed task force. By the way, we've had many of them in the state, and, you know, the findings go on the shelf, the recommendations go on the shelf, and life moves on, and nothing changes. I do believe there are issues with special education nationally, and I believe there are issues in the state of Connecticut. All you have to do is look at the reports, look at achievement data, look at the numbers and so on. And so I want to capture that in our report. And I'm not in any way saying that special ed directors or special ed teachers are not doing a super job. They are. But we still have to look at the fact that our numbers have increased by 6,000 over the last 5-6 years. And we say it's okay because our neighboring states are like us, but that doesn't mean it's okay. And I don't believe that RTI and SRBI is alive and well and doing well in every single district. So there are some things in here that I want to make sure we get in, but I also don't want to dominate and say it has to get in if you don't feel that way. But I do think there are some things, you know, I just don't want pablum recommendations. I want this task force, we put a lot of time and effort in, and I want to make sure that what we have in here moves forward. So.
But we have a plan, right, which is
Yeah.
that each of the subcommittees is going to take that section of the report and work it into a form that's acceptable. And then it's going to come back to me, and I'll make, you know, put it all into a single document and we use consistent language around and the like. Then we'll put it out for a vote. And, you know, let's get a schedule to do that.
So I just want to be clear, we're just looking at the eligibility, funding and service.
No, we were looking at all of them.
Well,
All the rest of them have
The
five.
Andrew
Oh, that's my fives.
Yeah, but the fives are gone.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
that's
all-
literally
so that's it. So it's just
everything
for-
other than the first three groups.
Right, exactly.
Well, some of the,
Nope, not one of them.
Not one of them.
The first three groups are all that lives by that.
no, but
Yeah.
Jason Adler has to.
But there's
Yeah,
five.
everyone has votes.
Every single one
Oh,
of those
yeah.
has fives.
Yeah, so the fives are the ones that we have to concentrate on today to say we're removing them.
Yeah, which is all of Andy and
Every-
Jason's.
Yeah, but let's go with eligibility. Eligibility looks okay, ones or twos, right?
Although,
Couple threes.
Yeah.
On eligibility?
Yeah. More information.
Oh, I see what you're doing. I see. Yeah.
Well, the second eligibility, you just raised a concern about Fran.
Right.
And the first one, did we all agree that the 8-year-old is the cutoff for that, or?
Yes.
I think we did.
I thought we thought about a grade level instead. Not first grade.
What age are his first grade?
Depends.
It
You're really
I
young.
don't remember.
It's gonna be hard.
I don't remember how to-
When they change the age of
Just-
kindergarten. You
Yeah,
have
I
to.
mean, it just seems to me it's more practical, it's more workable if we say you can use it in an IEP through first grade, but not after that.
So in this
But you
latest
need
version,
all of first grade to even, because you need all of that base instruction before you consider an LD eligibility.
So the end of first grade?
Andy,
Alright.
hey, folks. It has to be an age for us to report federally.
Yeah, it has to be. If it's grade, it could be.
The grade
All-
could be anything.
A whole band of ages.
Because then you're gonna have
Alright.
just schools
Yeah.
retaining kids.
Correct.
The state needs an age though, I said.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Depends on the
That's
age, so
the
we
age.
need an age, so
Okay, okay.
Through 7.
Thank you, Brian.
We agreed on.
Yeah, so
I thought
I started age
7 last time. Through 7.
through 7, so until the age of 8.
All right, so we're changing that through 7 years old?
No, it's good. Let's say,
They
turn 8.
they- when they turn 8. When they
Same
turn
thing.
8 through 7.
Okay, okay, all right,
Yeah.
perfect.
Who changes that on
First one.
This one?
Oh,
No,
no, this one,
The Google? Yeah, in the Google. They're not numbered.
Another numbered.
I was just trying to print it, unfortunately.
No, I actually am a big fan of paper.
Of what?
Of paper, yeah.
Then we can run it off, Kate.
well,
I think it's page 17. 17.
So we're, okay. Oh, wow, I was definitely not looking at 16 and
No.
17.
Yeah, it's item 2 on page 17. You want to read it?
On page 17.
16, actually.
Federal-
The way it printed out for me was age limit at the bottom of
Yeah,
page 16.
One line is page 31 and 50.
Okay,
I ain't gonna, you're gonna have to spend one night, like, I'm not.
Clearly. My
You know?
document is February 1st, 2024.
They're all different documents, yeah.
Scored on section 2, age limit for developmental delay. 37 and 58 and.
can we just stick to one document? Can we just
Yeah.
stick to this and then we'll do the wordsmithing later? But, we're never gonna get anywhere if we don't, move on, okay? So it stays up to grade 8, to age 8, okay? And if anyone needs more information on it, speak up now. Okay. The 1s and 2s, I'm gonna go through and leave. In the funding subcommittee.
Wait. I'm going to the second.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Would you
yeah,
just-
eligibility,
Would you just, gave a speech against,
yeah,
but there are no, 3 4s, or the 3s, but no 4s or 5s on that.
Correct.
okay.
Well,
My thing is,
well, I know your position on this. I'm just wondering how we, if we word it in such a way. I happen to agree with you, Brian, don't listen, that if we had a robust early programming, the eligibility rates would go down. And that seems to be your position as well, Brian.
it is, I just want, I want early intervention. I want a quality, RTI process in every school district. And then I want to look at eligibility rates after that. It's just been my own personal experience, and I agree, I worked in a challenged district, but it's from my own personal experience that that RTI was not in place. And so teachers didn't have a choice. There was nothing for the kids other than special education to get them any help. And I feel strongly that many of those children would not have had to be labeled special ed. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but I feel that they could have been intervened with and we would have been okay.
I don't think we're so far away, though, Fran, from what you're saying, because if you look at the services, subcommittees, we talk about tier 1. It's not always high quality. We also talk about universal pre-K is needed, so.
And the
that-
data that the eligibility subcommittee looked at, we are comparable to the other states. So,
Are you the eligibility sharing me?
yes.
Yes.
So,
This was our finding.
so I think it's up to you to try to redraft some language to both capture what you said, which is that we're comparable to other states, and at the same time, also capture the view of a lot of us that robust early intervention could have the effect of reducing the need for special education.
Which the 4th item under eligibility.
Correct.
I
You
think
can
it's
do
like-
different things.
Yeah, I think,
Maybe it's just the order in which they come in the report.
Yeah, that might help.
Right,
But
but
we
this
will-
is first and then.
Right.
If this is in place, then we agree.
Yeah, I forgot that you guys had also addressed the tier.
Correct.
yeah, here's next. Look at
It
the
comes
last
up in
one.
2 places.
Yeah.
They have the tiers,
Yeah.
we order it.
If we could just say that, I
Yeah.
would
These are
feel,
ordered first.
I would feel really good about it. The other thing that,
Is there a data component? I mean, I don't disagree with you, Fran, at all on that, but under the guise of findings, we should be able to point to something other than our opinion.
we have.
Yeah.
data that-
We have a
So
lot
as
of
long as
data.
it's data backed, then it's a finding.
Yep.
That, because I always worry when we're talking about finding absent, you know.
And we do
even if our
have-
guts are right.
we have tons of data on it.
Yeah, that's what I was just
And-
making
And I
sure.
think we can include that. The other piece is, I've been looking a lot at the achievement scores of kids with disabilities. And, special ed, when it was brought forward, was supposed to be a remedial piece for children to move forward. And frankly, I understand that we have some profound needs in special education. But when I look at the achievement gap, it frightens me. We've got 88,000 children in special ed, correct, in this state. And nowhere ever does it rise above 16 or 18% of those kids ever reaching a 3 or 4 on SBAC. And,
But
maybe
is that a criticism of the assessment tool as well? I mean, we know
well, it
that,
might be.
like, I mean, in all fairness, we sit here and talk about differentiation and the need for tiered intervention, and then we give everybody the same exact assessment and go, I don't know, why isn't everybody succeeding? It's crazy. So I think there should be probably some frame of reference of, if we are differentiating the instruction, the experience, and the tools so that we are meeting kids where they're at, the measures of those children's success should also be differentiated to reflect what their growth and their capabilities.
Well, we can say that is
Well,
true
I-
of
Let me
every.
just say, I fundamentally disagree with that.
Yeah, I do.
I think we need a common measure to see how all kids are doing, to see whether the gap is growing or decreasing, to see how kids with with IEPs are doing in relationship to their peers. I mean,
I'm just saying it's not the end all be all.
No, I agree it's not the end all be all, but I do want a standard measurement instrument where all students, including the 1%, frankly, where all students are measured.
I don't have anything here that shows the largest number since 2017-18 is 18% of the kids in reaching a 3 or 4 in mathematics. And here's the deal, guys. We talk about achievement gaps all of the time. We're always talking about the achievement gaps on race, on poverty. I don't often hear about the achievement gap in disabilities. And I do believe that 88,000 is a sizable number. It's 17-point-something% of our kids. I think we need to mention the fact that I don't know what it might be. It could be lots of different things, but I'm hoping that we all have high standards for all of our special ed students. That's all I'm thinking about. Do we actually know that we are meeting them where they are with the high standards that they will achieve? And I agree with Andy. I know, Kate, I know that the SBAC isn't everything. And I heard Brian say maybe that's not the right instrument. Well, fine, then state, change it. Change the instrument. But right now, that's all we have. And I'm saying we need to recognize the fact that there is a significant gap for students with disabilities.
Fran, or anybody of this, if you do take the SBAC and say someone with an IEP gets a bad score in math, how is that then applied? Is that then brought into the IEP, or do the people just say, oh, well, we don't worry about SBAC?
That's what I'm worried about.
I was wondering what are the steps?
There is no single point of information that a team uses to develop goals and objectives, right? So it would be the whole picture. They may use that as a informational piece, like, oh, they did very poorly in vocabulary, for example,
Right.
that's a common one, right? So you may want to ensure that vocabulary instructions.
Right.
So they won't use it as the basis, but they'll definitely
Use it as information.
Information to go.
that, but you're
Okay.
looking at day-to-day functioning, you're looking at the specialized program that they're using. There's a whole picture that you would look at.
Okay.
For
Just
sure.
this one.
But I just want to remind everyone that we need to have the highest standards possible, and maybe we do throughout the state, but we need to have the highest standards possible for every special ed child to develop and be who they need to be. This just worries me. And I think we need to talk about it more. We need to, when we talk about it, when we put it on the radar screen, it means something when we talk about kids in poverty, we get intervention programs or whatever. We haven't talked about this enough, I don't think.
Well, I think that you apply it as a finding with just the data. I
Yeah,
mean, the data is what it is. To that end, I mean,
and it's the greatest achievement gap in the state.
and again, I don't think that's the finding.
Okay, that's
That to
all.
me is just,
Yeah.
it just is.
We're not making the recommendation.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know,
we're
Right.
but
We're
it's
not
definitely
saying-
an acknowledgement that there's something
But
to
there-
be considered
there's something to be
in terms of
considered.
how we are moving forward. But to me, that's part of a finding.
Okay, the lack of special education weight in the ECS formula causes inequity. There's a 3 there.
Before, the one beforehand,
Oh, yeah.
excess cost.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me just state my position on that, which is that excess cost does not fund special education. It's an insurance program for catastrophic programs, but it just shocks me that we're spending, $191 or $252 million on that program, when that money could be used to hire literacy instructors, to provide special ed, to provide social emotional learning. It strikes me, I'm now, I'm willing to accept special ed excess cost funding as a mechanism, but I think we're deluding ourselves if we think that it has anything whatever to do with providing special education service. It's not.
I think,
I would have to disagree as
Yeah.
a district person who uses it to fund my outplacements and tuition.
Yeah.
I take my excess cost prediction every year and I use that towards my tuition and transportation budget. I got a $12 million, and I'm not a large district, tuition and transportation, so I use that 2 million excess cost to offset. Because my board of ed, the town's not gonna give me $12 million for a small portion of my students. Like, we use it all, it's part of our budget.
Well, but the town is obliged, or you're obliged to provide a free program of public education if that.
We are,
That
but
includes it out of different placement.
But I think at the budget, wise, doesn't matter where the money comes from.
Exactly, it's all money.
Like, it's all, like, but here's, like, if you don't have an excess cost, we're just gonna not have literacy coaches gonna be paying for excess cost anyway.
It's gonna be.
You know what I mean? Like, if I was,
It'll be
then maybe
down.
we're getting like $4 million. So if we didn't have that $4 million for excess cost, and it just came from a very regular budget, I wouldn't be able to hire $4 million more people. I still have to pay the excess cost.
Right.
It doesn't matter where it comes from. At the end of the day, I'm still taking that $4 million and putting it in outplace. I think that's.
I don't agree with that. I just, think that it's,
The problem, I think,
it is
I
not,
just want to say,
but
the
it's
problem,
not funding special
No.
ed in any way.
the problem that we're having though is it's just an increase.
Is
Qualified. It went up 16% 2 years ago. This year it went up 25%.
I know, I know.
All right, Lisa, did you have a question?
Muted. I was just going to, I think, say what Mike said with regards to funding and that it's all fungible, right? And it just helps the district pay for the expenses that they otherwise would be, expending anyway. With regards to the special education weight specifically, though, in this scored findings report that I'm looking at that was just emailed out, I don't see a 4 in that line item. So I don't know if I'm not looking at the correct
Number
sheet.
4.
It's
No,
in the excess cost line.
It's in the
first line.
excess cost line.
Number 4.
Yeah, the weighting was just a 3. Someone said they needed more information on that, that's all.
So is the report that we're sending out to the General Assembly, this interim report, are we excluding everything that even has a 3 on it?
No, we're only excluding the 5s.
Wait. That was, the question was, are we including it? And I think the answer is yes, we are.
Yeah, we are including it.
We are.
Okay.
including it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, is there anything else there? A model contract for, under funding subcommittee,
Can you talk a little bit about the
a model
model
contract?
contract, and whether it's a
Yeah, I mean, I think for some of our schools that are smaller, that don't have access to attorneys, this would be a great starting point. So, yeah, the way we wrote it in the report was that, representatives from school districts and a private provider, representative would develop a model contract that could be used. If our school
Wouldn't be
district-
standard,
Right, wouldn't be
mandated.
obligated, it's available.
Yes.
And there'll be, one issue that kept on coming up, which is not in here, is we're not proposing a state schedule of payments, right?
No.
No.
We never talked about.
Okay.
Okay, so
Cares about that.
model contract moves forward.
Yeah.
Okay, the last one does not move forward, and we've already addressed that in the draft report. If we go to services, we have a couple of threes there on the first one. Tier 1 instruction is not always high quality to include practices such as UDL, culturally responsive, and MTS.
Who has a problem with that issue?
Anybody want? Okay, we're moving it forward. All right, paras,
Is that the only one that got?
that's all one, yeah.
We all agree on that.
I would say all special ed services
Yeah.
are like, I was shocked that it just was paraprofessional.
It's not when we originally wrote it. I think it's.
Can we clean that up?
But, yeah.
I sent out some data this morning
Yeah.
that was shared at the,
But that's what I was.
state
looking
board
at
meetings.
the-
And what it shows is that
Supporting the growth of paraeducators and really talking about, not only their professional growth, but hopefully to retain them and also help to move them forward. So it wasn't just about, that was how it was.
Yeah,
filmed too.
simplify it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
okay,
much
I was like-
simplified,
Okay, because
Yeah.
my concern is in all of this, like,
all areas.
special education, if we're not careful, isn't gonna become a problem because we're not gonna be able to offer.
Right.
Like, if I'm not seeing professionals dying to go into the field. Nor am I hearing, any great advocacy of young people saying, I want to be a special. Like, we have created an environment in schools that is not desirable from an employee standpoint. So the shortage is extraordinary across the board with all of, like, I'm hearing it with all the service providers.
True.
the chart I put out that Ajit gave me that was from September, it's a little dated, shows that the vacancies in regular ed teachers has decreased, but the vacancies in special ed teachers has substantially increased. And has increased even more in terms of parents.
So I think,
I mean, that's, to me, the crisis, that we can't solve a single one of these problems without people.
That's right.
Like,
And we did go into it in more detail.
I remember reading it.
Ideas, this was.
She didn't know if,
yeah,
And
I wanted to make sure it didn't.
Yes.
we
thank
also,
you,
but
yeah.
didn't we also discuss, social workers, school psychologists, those are also, all the support.
Yes.
Yeah, your speech language,
Speech language.
Yeah, we have data on powers and teachers. We don't have very good data on related service providers.
Oh, really? Okay.
And part of that is that when districts are short of them, they can hire private agencies
yeah.
to backfill.
Can we do
can't
a
do that with
finding,
teachers.
like, there is not enough data?
Well, it's interesting, I'm in the process of doing a
I
district.
thought we had a,
Review
Okay.
of subcontracting these services, so.
let me ask
we'll
Brian,
have
Brian,
to,
Brian, can I just ask you, don't we have I thought we had a list of all of the, shortages, including social workers and psychologists from the State Department, didn't we? A survey?
So publicly facing on EdSite, the amount of school psychologists, social workers, and counselors to student ratio in each district. So that might be what you're referring to, that we just published that, and I can put the link in the chat. It doesn't indicate how many vacancies are, but it indicates the number of school psychologists per student all the way to the building level across the state.
I do remember that, and I think
Yeah.
we should use that data in,
There was also obviously a letter from the commissioner designating certain shortage areas.
Well, that's education.
Yeah.
Like
Yes,
when,
we do
because
that
when-
every year.
yeah, but I mean, when high school social studies became a shortage, I knew we were in trouble.
Yeah.
High school social studies is somehow
It
a
used to be
shortage.
the opposite.
It used to be you
Tell
couldn't,
people not to go.
I mean, yeah.
Okay,
That's just funny.
just know that paraprofessionals, it will include all.
No, that's fine. It just seems like an overly simplified statement on a
Yeah,
pretty
I agree.
critical.
I
And I
know.
remembered reading more, but that's fine.
Yeah.
As long as
It
it
will
covers
be in
the
there.
breadth of the problem.
Okay, AI has a potential role in special ed. Some needed more explanation.
And there are
Just
two
wanted
pieces
to
of
add that.
legislation moving on that this year.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah.
Well, there's also like, I won't, but there's some really cool stuff that goes on. Really cool
So
stuff.
we're just saying it has basically there's potential, like it's worth
Right,
looking
and,
at.
but we should be specific about, are they teaching tools? What is the AI specific? Because it has to be, is it writing the essay for them rather than, okay,
You're
that's why I would love more,
That's why I was
specificity.
saying potential, and I think when we wrote that in that report, we gave a little more. And I think that would have to go in our recommendations in terms of like, how do we recommend that it's used? Because it has potential, for example, to take a test and differentiate it so that a student could access grade level material.
Right.
Engage in a conversation, when we're talking about closing the achievement gap. So that could be a much grander conversation.
Yeah.
I think we're just trying to raise that there's potential and it's worth looking at further.
There's really, there's
Like
some
major.
robot, technology for nonverbal students. That's really.
Yeah, right, so this should be specific,
Well,
a little bit more, with what you are discussing, maybe examples.
or maybe just potential as again, we could say potential, I don't want to go down the path because that's
Right.
recommendations. I think it's just potential and maybe worth exploring.
To be
worth-
explored.
To be
That's it.
explored,
Yeah.
like,
That's-
we're
I mean,
putting
if
this on the table, we don't want to ignore it. And we
Right.
want more information because we could talk about instruction, assessment, access, there's.
Communication,
many paths,
yeah.
exactly.
And there may be a place, truthfully, everybody gets scared about the essay writing. But I'll say this to you, that there's a place for that where AI is, first of all, it's an industry standard. That you go out into corporate America and AI is writing 3/4 of the things you're receiving. So this kind of grandiose notion that the penultimate ability is to write an essay is actually being diffused in the industry world as we speak. That actually the priority skill set when you go out into the world is verbal communication. So there's an interesting moment here where we need to think about, are we valuing something that is our comfort and what we kind of grew up in a system that's that the best of the best are the ones who write the best. And like this is the penultimate skill set when in practice, I think being a good writer matters, being able to communicate effectively matters. But are we looking at a space where we're holding kids back, but there's a technology that could support them and we need to teach kids to be better editors or consumers so to me, when we talk about technology, it really is in the scope of what is the deficit and how, listen, 25 years ago, a graphing calculator was the sign of the devil, right? Like you can't possibly give kids calculators. Now we give them little computers, we teach them to, we've completely supplanted in.
Yeah, but remember, secondary
so-
institutions, you might have on your IEP that you can use a calculator, but that professor doesn't have to honor that. So we just have to make sure when we do AI, that we're also teaching, you have to.
Yeah, I hear what you're
Yeah,
saying.
that's my concern, is that you could say, you've done your math with that calculator, and you go in, that professor does not have to honor that.
Well,
Can I chime in if it's possible?
Sorry.
Jason?
Thank you. So I'm the chair of our subcommittee in Clinton on policy, and everyone is struggling with AI, and I love the philosophical conversation. I'm just not sure that it needs to be specific to special education, nor do I necessarily think it needs to be, I'm one of the threes, needs to be something we recommend. Like everyone is grappling with this. I think there's a lot of wonderful ways to use AI, but I feel like that's not our place to talk about. I
We're
think that
not
there are.
recommending it though. It's a
We're not
No, I
positive.
understand, but it's
Yeah.
being included in our report, and I'm just like, I'd love to focus on the singular things that will be, savings for districts and better for kids. And AI is going to be something that everyone's grappling with, and I just don't want the state to come down on the districts with anything that they use our report for that wasn't meant as a recommendation, but just as AI can be useful. I hope our representatives know that.
Would it be important to note that emerging technologies, maybe if we take it off, because the problem is AI is only as good as the moment. Like AI is the buzzword of today. I don't know what's
Something
tomorrow.
next month.
So, I mean, I don't know
Well-
if it's that concept of, there's an important role for emerging technologies because I do think there's a potential cost effectiveness of this.
Well, that's a continuation of what's been going on for the last few years, where assistive technology has been seen as one of the great benefits of this. Well, I'm just saying that our minutes are being taken by AI, so don't worry about what you say.
Yeah.
Just right.
And, yeah, it's AI minutes, so we can wordsmith that, but we're just saying it has a potential, okay? Just under that, the next one has twos and ones, I'm not even stopping there. Universal pre-K is needed. Someone needed additional information on that. Is there any question about that?
Leslie has a hand raised.
Leslie?
Actually, no, I was on the AI.
Oh, I'm
Raising,
sorry,
so.
Leslie. Do you want to add to the AI?
I want to acknowledge what Jason was saying and that we not overlook that Gen AI or other emerging technologies, like he said, are not just viable to support students. I do believe there is significant opportunity for cost efficiencies and supports for adults as well. So wherever it lands, I just want us to not only limit ourselves to think about the impact that it can have on students, very important. However, from a programmatic implementation perspective, there is a lot of opportunity there.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, now we're going into the Andy.
I don't know whether, we're not, let's not even discuss those. What I'm concerned, because there are fives on all of them, and so
Yeah,
what I'm concerned about is that we were given 9 tasks to do by the legislature, and we covered about half of them. And I'm wondering whether we want to do anything about the other half. Let me just give you some of them.
can we just finish this? though?
Okay, but I mean, yeah,
All right,
but
and then-
we're all fives from here on.
Yeah, all right, so we're not gonna,
I don't understand, like, we're not supporting universal pre-K?
yeah, that's what I'm saying,
Universal
because,
pre-K, so no, there's no fives on that.
yeah, there is, in yours,
Fives.
yeah.
Later on.
Somebody put five,
Under-
one person put fives through all recommendations.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the process is a little flawed if where that's gonna be an end stop. We have one person that put fives for 30 categories.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know, universal pre-K, I thought we were all agreeing that.
But that's not like, that's not fair.
Oh, so on yours, we got fives, but
Yeah.
above it, we're.
When I recommended it's a 5, when somebody else recommends it's okay.
Okay. Make sure we're okay with that.
it's all right, it's gonna go in there. All right, so we'll skip that.
And I don't, like, if we did not look at number 7, I don't know who that is, but they put 5 in all of those categories and looked at anything else that didn't have 5 for consideration.
Yeah,
I don't know whether we want to do that. Some of them have several 5s, but
Yeah.
it doesn't still look like.
okay. All right, um,
On the CEA.
Jason Adler, they all have fives. I had to give up something there, boy, smaller class sizes. Didn't make it.
Wait, so are we really just skipping over all those?
I don't even remember making those recommendations, but I kind of feel hurt. Like, so we gave me all fives.
Yeah, but we agreed at the beginning of this.
That's fine. There's
task
veto
force.
power for each individual. That's fine.
Yeah.
I probably put down a curious 3 on class sizes. I would love to do it. Who's paying for that?
Well, who's teaching them? Right. I mean, I think you still have the problem
Where the
of,
classrooms were.
you know, because I think smaller class sizes is actually the answer to 90.
Oh, I think it's fantastic.
For all.
I think
So
it's
why would
fantastic.
why would we not put it in, as a recommendation? No, as a finding that class size matters, that's all. You know, if you have a smaller class size,
Listen, one of the things we know about class size is, so when you look at what do your elite private schools advertise, right? Think about it. Choate's not telling you they got 28 kids in a classroom and all is well. They're saying we got 12 kids and personalized attention. When we talk about, when you look at the difference between Darien and Bridgeport, Darien parents would never allow 28 kids in a classroom, ever. They would literally go over and hire a contractor to add a classroom to a building and go out and hire a teacher from Bridgeport to work in Darien before they would allow their children to be in a class of 28. So, you know, there's an extraordinary amount of information that informs us that class size is a priority in terms of driving student achievement. To me, that's a fairly universally accepted concept. But it's not one that we act on and do anything about. We just continuously go, well, that's too bad.
well, personally, I think it should be in the findings, but it's not here. You know, we've got vibes. I want to abide by what people have said.
Fran,
Yeah,
this is,
yeah.
I'm so sorry, but this doesn't make a lot of sense from process. Like, it's one person blocking 30 things.
That's what we said, but it's not just one person, Catherine. There are vibes throughout.
Well,
and
let's
we
go
agree.
through that though, but I mean, that kind of invalidates a lot of things. So it's just gonna be, you know, who is representing what, and then everybody else, all the other voices are crowded out by one person stopping a conversation. I think that's really problematic.
But that's what we agreed to in the beginning of this process, that if people had an issue and they felt very strongly that they could not support it, that it was vetoed. It was on every agenda that we sent out. All of it said that we would veto that. And it's similar to what we've done in other committees, and it's hard, but it's the only way that we know that we have the voice of people in the room.
You have the voice of a certain people who are crowding out the other voices. So I strongly disagree.
Is there an opportunity, if there's a majority interest in this space, where we could ask one of the subcommittees to reconsider one of these recommendations and to maybe reframe it? Yeah, because it may be that, like, I suspect, and I don't know if 7 wasn't me, but I suspect, based on the way that is framed, is that the person valued the subcommittee conversation over individual perspective. So I wonder if there's a space where we think there's something important in any of these 3 categories, we could ask a subcommittee to reconsider
I like that idea.
as a mechanism to kind of appeal the process, if you will.
Fran, I just have a question. This is Tiffany. I don't know if you see my hand up. It's a little hard when you're online, but I'm wondering, just going back to the conversation, and I know at this point in time, it seems as if we're not putting it in, but it goes back to a conversation that you had earlier. Outside of just looking at the reduction of a class size, one, there's information that talks about it has to be statistically significant as far as how many kids are in a classroom, but then also going back to what you said earlier, what's happening in the context of that classroom. So I do think, going back to the notion when you were talking about SRBI and really looking at what are the things that we're doing prior to identification at some point in time, and making sure that that's captured, even if it's not about class size per se, because you could have small class size and have horrible teaching and it's still not going to get you to the end that you want. So I think that really just being able to kind of merge those 2 ideas in some way, and that may go back to what some folks over here are talking about, going back to committee and looking at, but I think that the essence of what you're talking about with that good teaching prior to identification is something that we can't lose.
Well, I think in some places in here, we did talk about tier 1 instruction.
Yep.
We did, and we have talked about tier 1 instruction. And we spent a lot of time on that right in the beginning. I really like Kate's suggestion that if there are some things that individuals recommended that we think as a task force, even though they've got fives in them, that one of the three subgroups should consider those. Let's put those forward now, because I think that means something. I personally would like to put forward something on class size.
So should we go through then the findings and see if there were
Yeah,
ones that we'd like to?
why don't you
direct
call
to
them
one
out?
of-
The
one
members
of
can
the-
call them
Within
out.
class size, Fran, are you also talking about, you're talking about the tiered support, like if you say you have a 28 class, 28 students,
Yep.
but if you have a paraeducator that's specifically there for tiered reading intervention, that actually, is that what you're talking about? That person is walking around helping, so you do have a class of 28, but students are getting that individualized
Yeah,
attention.
I
Is that what you're talking
honestly,
about?
to be honest with you, I was just talking about class size.
Tiered class size.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Straight up.
I would
Just
class that 28 that
overall.
room.
class size. I'd be happy if they had paras in them as well.
Okay.
But I just believe that, with a skilled teacher and a small class size, so much can happen.
So should we go through the findings and see if there are ones we
Well,
want
you
to?
can just call them out if there are, let's
So you-
start with Andy's. Well, Andy, you're very tolerant of us, so,
Not at all happy with this. process.
all right. Are there any findings under Andy's that you would like to bring back to the,
Well, universal pre-K, we are, is.
Yeah.
is-
yeah, I think class size,
Oh, sorry.
Where do you?
I
wanna
would like to, bring back, SDE compliance monitoring. On-site reviews.
What committee do you want to send it to?
what,
Number 26.
you want to send that to services?
We've already reviewed these.
Whatever you think.
Right, school committees first.
Yeah.
Let's just go one through one at a time first, like we'll go through
Yeah.
any, then we'll go hop around.
All
Is
right,
that
let's
okay?
go. Okay,
That was.
IEPs for all.
That's
All. Okay,
Uh,
class size.
in general terms, not with those specifics.
We already
Okay.
know, yeah.
So class size, where do you want to send it? What group? Let's just. Services.
That would be services, yeah. Teacher pay bonus. No,
No.
okay. Universal pre-K we took
We already
care
said
of.
those.
Direct funding of, special ed not included in ECS.
Didn't we already talk about that in funding?
Yeah, we did.
So it's already been vetted by funding, move on.
Okay, in school, I'm sorry, CSDE compliance of monitoring on-site reviews.
That's what Catherine. mentioned.
Yeah, I guess I don't really understand the issue with that. I mean, people who are the ones filing complaints and even getting robust corrective action. And then that corrective action is not, monitored or not followed up on. It just seems like something that would make sense to do some kind of on-site auditing and reviews.
They already do that.
Do on-site
They do,
monitoring.
Yeah, there is
Yeah.
on-site monitoring.
Yeah, we would need more information about that. I mean, we're happy to inform the committee about our general supervision responsibilities and monitoring. Last year in legislation, there was on-site random unannounced visits that was passed as part of the legislation, and those are being conducted. But we're always happy to either share information or review our practices.
I would love to talk about that, Brian. I'm familiar with your regular practices, but I'm not familiar with that new legislation and how that's working.
Okay, we can move past that then?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one, in-school, observation should be statutory.
That's that one.
That's a lot of us.
Okay. Many school, I'm just gonna read the end of this.
Yeah.
To that end, CSD should issue guidance on the minimum requirements for an appropriate school-based evaluation.
That's a recommendation, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And we already have a finding around.
Okay, all right.
Well, if I can just point out, I mean, a lot, without going into quality, because that's not my you know, I don't have that expertise, but almost every single evaluation I get has no recommendations. School-based evaluations. I mean, and I think a lot of folks have the same experience. So I'd be very interested in talking more about the fact that school-based evaluations should come up with recommendations and not just say, we recommend sending this to the PPT to discuss further.
I mean, obviously every district's different, but I've never seen a evaluation that didn't have recommendations in the 2 districts I've worked in. Now, they're suburban on the shoreline, so maybe that's just different, but it seems to me that makes sense.
So whether we save that for the recommendations world, that's fine. I think that's important to point out. That's a lot of folks experience who practice in this.
Okay, so let's move forward. We're not gonna send that, back. Okay, misbehavior.
It's a lot of fun.
Ed's got a lot of 5s. Okay, let's move,
Is there the not?
That wasn't even a thing, it was like a nothing.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was part of the one minute.
all right, the next one has a couple of 5s, but
Well, this is important because we were specifically asked to opine on gifted and talented.
yeah.
And I think, you know, I was just looking at the list of 9 things that we're supposed to look at, and we're covering very few of them. Gifted and talented is one we can cover.
And as a finding, this is accurate.
So should this go back, and did services talk about this at all?
Actually, Kitchen and Talented was part of eligibility.
Yeah.
So, did you guys talk about it?
No, we were asked not to, so we can go back and talk about it.
Go.
All right, so let's
Go.
send
We
it
ought to
back.
put something about gifted and talented.
We ought to find something,
All right.
so that would be eligibility.
Beautiful.
So that will go
One
back
quick
to,
point, just one quick point for the subcommittee, that the gifted and talented is a state requirement, not a federal requirement. So IDA funds aren't able to be utilized for those services, just as an FYI.
Right, absolutely. All right, so eligibility's got something to do.
okay, the next one has, a lot of 5s. I'm not gonna go there. All right. Okay, let's continue on. The next one seems to have a lot of 5s, unnecessary special
Well,
education.
I think the
compliance
paperwork is a real impediment,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have, I mean, we can certainly make the finding the paperwork as
I mean,
the teachers,
Yeah.
but
it's a lot
coming up with
of work, it's
recommendations,
required.
coming up with recommendations is gonna be
It's-
impossible.
Yeah.
My memory, because you go through so many committees, right? You're like, where was I last? What was I wearing? So I kind of remember we discussed about the paperwork, making it so that we actually have recommend administrative help for the teachers. So they're spending a little bit more time on working with students.
We
and-
talked
Yeah, we
about that.
discussed that at the meeting, and we talked about doing that potentially by ratio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but that's not in the report now, so who would be looking at that?
But we discussed it, we didn't agree.
Do we not agree?
I think I remember a discussion beyond that would be perfect in an ideal world, but
Right,
we couldn't really mandate it. There are some districts that might not.
but kind of like the issue, I mean, it's some things in findings just are.
Yeah.
There's an extraordinary amount of paperwork that goes along with special education.
Yeah.
We can work on what's the solution to that, but I think, and I don't know that there's a great way to solve that, right? Like to the point that there is a lot of documentation required and necessary.
referred to unnecessary.
Right.
Right,
A judgment.
that is a judgment. That's
Right, yeah.
You
So
don't read it.
I think I would ask that a group talk about what's the framing of the sort of administrative responsibilities, the paperwork tasks that maybe unnecessary is the wrong frame for it. Extensive. The extensive, and that we need to figure out how to support that effort. If we believe all of that documentation is important and relevant, one of 2 things has to happen. You've got to reduce the caseloads of these educators significantly or provide additional supports to get that done. But I think we can agree that there's an extraordinary amount of documentation and paperwork.
And I think we go farther and say there's an extraordinary amount of paperwork which diverts special ed teachers from working with students.
So who can we send that to frame
Yeah, I
it?
think that's,
Well, that was.
I think
there's a
so.
teacher
That's fair.
retention.
Yeah,
I think
I
that
think
would go to, I think that goes to services.
I would think services.
Yeah,
Just for the
absolutely.
framing of it.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the thought was if we can free up some of the administrative work, then we can focus, especially with the shortage, we can focus on teachers doing
Yep,
what they're
I
good at.
agree.
That makes sense. All right.
Okay,
Jason, number 2, we basically agreed on it. That's already in there.
yeah, we have that in there.
Agreed, right?
Yep,
Smaller class sizes we talked
small
about.
class sizes, RTI, universal preschool. We said no to the direct funding.
Yeah, I think that came up.
I don't know, okay.
Yeah,
Isn't that already on?
Yeah.
I think we put that somewhere else
Yeah.
under funding.
There's a lot of.
In-school suspension does not always have a behavioral intervention component.
Yeah, I think that's a critically important issue, but I'm not sure we want to go into that.
That's part of our mission.
Well, I think it is, but there are also lots of other groups working on that, so we don't
Right.
need to.
Yeah, I wouldn't dip into that
Yeah.
only because it's not a special education specific. If that's an all kid.
Well, I think, I mean, then anything that's involving, behavior or, needs, therapeutic needs for kids, and we wouldn't be able to talk about in this committee if that's what we're looking at.
I thought we had talked about not going to.
No, I agree with the young lady who just talked before, because I agree that I think that some of the things that we're writing in here are general ed specific. And if we are doing that, then what is it that we're taking on? So I think we have to be very careful about the balance, right? We're talking about small class size, that's not special education. We're talking about behavior, that's not special education. We're talking about RTI, that's not special education. To what extent are we going to focus in general education with special education recommendation? I just think we have to think about the balance.
I think to this I don't disagree, Tiffany. I think to this recommendation, though, then we can say kids that have IEPs, that have behavioral goals on their IEPs should get behavioral support during in-school suspension.
Well, that's a recommendation,
So
that's not a
Yeah,
finding.
That's not a finding.
Okay, my finding is that most kids I mean, this is like kind of semantic, but okay, we could just keep
Do
doing
we
that.
have?
Well, I think
We don't
it's a,
actually know that. Do we actually have data that says that, or is that just our experiences that?
Right, but I think the point is in this committee, we keep saying data and data, but that disadvantages parents' experiences. So if we're gonna keep saying we need data for everything, then we're never gonna be able to represent parent experience, and which is anecdotal for the most part, right? I mean, so I think that's a problem, and that's kind of being used to shout down a lot of things.
To be honest with you, just, and I'm just a member of the group. I do believe that we need to beef up in-school suspension. And in many cases, I don't believe there is a behavioral component,
So could we
a
reword that
behavioral
as
improvement.
something that we then want to dig into? It sounds like we're interested in more
I just say you should
information, but-
be careful, because the harder we make it to do in school, the more kids are gonna be sent home. That's just gonna be the reality, right? But you don't have the behavior support in school, and then we're saying you need in-school support if you're in school suspension, people are gonna get sent home. I'm just not, I agree we need some behavior, but I think that's gonna be the downside when,
Well, again, are we getting ourselves in the place of recommending versus finding? Should a finding be that there needs to be more exploring of this, like?
Yeah,
and then
explore behavior
Like,
component,
let's not
right.
sign ourselves up for something, but we realize that there's a finding that there's an issue. And the issue we need to dig deeper. I don't know, is that?
I don't know. I don't know. I just, I'm thinking more in terms of, a counselor available to talk about why the behavior is the way it is and so on. That's not usually, well, at least in some of the challenge districts, we don't have the staff to do that, but.
But
do I
if kids
think-
have, if kids are in school suspension, they still are supposed to have access to FAPE. So that's not even a recommendation. That's the way it's supposed to be. So I think we should underscore that.
That we're finding that.
Well, I thought the basic question was whether we dip into the behavioral area at all in this.
We have a whole section on behavior.
Yeah.
We do,
Yeah, we talked about
we
it.
do.
And we talked about.
Well, I mean, I certainly agree that in-school suspension should be used as a therapeutic intervention. Not as just throwing kids in a room.
I don't disagree.
So do we want to send that to a group
Let's send
to?
it
Yeah,
to service.
they can write it.
Sorry, guys.
I think we need another
Okay.
subcommittee. Force the.
I change subcommittees.
Student, the student success plans, you know what, this is for everybody. This isn't special ed. I mean, the student
No.
success plans have
That's
never
not
been,
special.
you know.
I think we refer this to the mandate task force.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're meeting right after this.
Yeah.
There you go.
We have people who
He
will
knows.
share that.
You know.
Do
She's
students
feeding
with
the others.
IEPs, does their student success plan, do they inform
should.
each other? Okay.
I think if I obviously brought this up at some point. If I did, it was in the fact that is it repetitive work, right? A student success plan is really, it's not nearly as good as what Andy recommended, which was IEPs for all, which I don't think we could possibly do. But it's the second best option, which is to have a plan that's full of sort of surveys and student work to show what they learned over their time. It just seemed like it was like unfunded mandate / repetitive work for students who have an IEP. But not a student stays on an IEP all 4 years. So, I don't know what I was thinking. Don't do it. We're not gonna do it.
You were thinking good stuff, Jason.
you are.
Let's move on to the next one. All right, it's absolutely a statement of fact, but do we want to put it in there?
I want to make them all freaking t-shirts to make them wear it.
Yeah.
I don't know that we probably need to put that in the report. But we might be willing to invest in t-shirts.
You write a letter to Santa and start.
Okay, next one. Yeah, I agree with that one, by the way, totally.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we have so many mandates coming down from them, but anyway. Outside advisor, observer.
That has multiple fives. I'll tank both
Okay.
the next ones because of multiple fives, but.
All right, funding not needed for accountability.
What does that mean?
Again, trying to sort of realize when I made these statements of finding, that wasn't from a subcommittee, it was probably just an opinion. I'm guessing it was linking accountability to funding that, and I probably was worried about students getting punished for lack of accountability or whatever for a certain case. Again, as multiple fives, I don't think we need to look at it, but I'm guessing, reading my mind in the past, that's probably what I was getting at, is that I've seen cases that cost so much money to the district, and then that hurts the general population, and in this case, other students getting services from those teachers, excuse me. But again, it's not articulated very well.
I also agree that we often withhold funding from districts that aren't doing what they're supposed to do, which just makes things worse for those districts. And so to that extent, but I don't think it's worth covering this.
I don't think so. Okay, let's go to the next one. That it has a lot of ones and twos. Teachers are leaving because of poor working conditions, including very large caseloads.
We don't have data on that right now. I think data is being collected on that, right? Brian, are you doing some extra surveys of teachers now? Special ed teachers?
There's supposed to be exit surveys going on, and that's part of last year's
The
legislation.
level,
That's at the
Yeah.
district.
not at the state level.
But I would say that if we're allowing parental anecdotal evidence, I can get you thousands of pieces of anecdotal evidence on this.
We have national data on that,
Yeah.
published research.
Well, I mean,
I don't have any problem with that moving.
I have the problem with the conclusion of everything. It is absolutely the case that there are poor working conditions for special ed teachers. And that, and
Special
then,
education teachers are leaving the profession, and then we get some data.
I mean, I think if nothing else, our vacancy in the state of Connecticut supports the fact that we have a problem.
Can we reverse?
Already covered in the
what's
the
the,
remember how we talked about it? So this may already be covered in that shortage of staffing in general.
okay.
But I do think it's important to put in, working conditions.
But could we-
Which includes caseload.
Could we reverse the language? I'm trying to wordsmith as we're talking about, saying, make it an attractive thing instead of saying the thing we don't have, we have huge anecdotal evidence for. I mean, I can tell you how many times people get emails saying fill a role in a different district, to instead say, we need to make the special education positions of it that are in, crisis in terms of numbers more attractive to potential candidates. And we could come up with ideas and stuff, but that makes it a more practical finding, which is we need more people instead of sort of, finding negative stuff that we have anecdotal, but not perhaps hard evidence for.
And what subcommittee would this go to?
But my question is whether or not it's already covered in the services. Because
Okay.
we talked about this with the paraprofessional
Yeah, we did.
shortage and we said that there was language that referenced. So I think it's probably covered.
Okay.
There
I
is.
think so too.
Can I ask a quick question just to the folks? I know we've talked in the past about limiting or capping caseloads, and I'm sure there are a lot of thoughts on that. My question is one of the main pushbacks on that because it'd be very hard to quantify a number of kids on a caseload because their needs are so different?
Yeah.
Intensity of services. So
And
if
that's
we-
why we didn't want to quantify.
Yeah.
Do other states do that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I put out a memo on that.
I didn't read it.
I honestly think it's problematic.
Okay.
It still continues to be problematic if we still continue to have problems with identification. So we have to figure those pieces out as well.
Well,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
About how we
I'm
look
saying
at
we can
caps
do
and
it.
looking at caseloads when we still have issues of identification that feed into some of the things that we're talking about, like, by way of caseloads.
I
So
think,
we have to be careful.
Yeah,
I will say I have one district that has caseload language in their contract, and they're the only district that doesn't have a shortage of staff in special education.
Interesting. Is it a small?
Nope.
Okay.
No, what's the language?
It's in Fairfield County. I know which one.
No, that one's not mine, but it's in Harford County. And,
Yeah, there's one in Fairfield County as well.
yeah. So I will say that there's a thought process of, in special education, that places that are more likely to protect the caseloads are where the teachers are willing to go.
Could we say something like, other states, haven't implemented caseload limits, and this issue needs further regulation?
I mean, I think it's fair to say
I
that
think so.
caseloads, much like class sizes, matter.
I like that, Karen. I think we can say that in the, that would be part of the,
Shortage area one?
yeah, service.
Is that
one.
in now? 20 states have some.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to open that up. I mean, I guess I did mean it. I
No, I think you, I think.
was just
it
curious about
a-
the major pushback to it. I didn't really know what the argument would be.
All right, next,
The 20 states have some.
a significant increase. I think that's a finding.
That's already in there, I think.
I think we have that, yeah. Okay.
And that leads to the next one, which is some were over-identified and some under-identified.
Yeah. I think we have that already.
And that the disproportionate increase in high poverty districts, as
We're adding that to our language,
I'm not sure there's been a disproportionate increase.
Not
There's a
in-
higher level of that special
Correct.
designation in the high poverty districts.
Right.
But that's always been the case. I'm not sure it's increasing any faster there.
I don't know if Brian has any information on that.
We have the data from.
Yeah, the data.
Prevalence rates by district.
We have that.
Yeah,
we have that.
We have that over time.
It's higher. Well, it's higher for a lot.
It's higher. It's higher.
it's higher. Well, I think,
Class sizes are a little higher.
Yeah,
Everything's
yeah,
higher.
I think we need to say that in under eligibility. Yeah, okay, good.
Just a.
And last, under funding, there is a significant rise in the cost of special ed services. All right,
The second part is, not.
That's already noted though in the funding document.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the second part, I don't know that it's.
That is not accurate.
Fran, can I just say one thing about the identification, though? I think we need to always contextualize that, right? Because it's like putting out there and saying special ed services cost a lot of money. Like, we know that, but when you just use that, when we put that out as a soundbite, we know that people that becomes a scapegoat. So I just want to be careful that when we're talking about, even if there is a disproportionate increase, we're talking about what Tiffany's saying, like, where, how is that starting with regular ed, and how is that impacting the identification if there isn't a robust RTI and all that. So just anytime we put that out there, we have to contextualize it. That's all.
Absolutely. We will do that, Catherine.
At some
So,
point in time, as we're just talking about this, and I don't know where we capture it, and I don't know if we do capture it, and maybe this is just my thing, but I do think that as we're talking about this, even with looking at caseload sizes and RTI, really looking at, again, access and opportunity for children of color, there's still issues of disproportionality that exist. And at some point in time, somewhere, that should be captured. Because I feel that it continues to be exclusionary practice for children of color. In some regards, not all.
I agree with you.
Okay,
Tiffany.
thank you.
I want to, I remain concerned about what we were assigned to do and what we haven't done. A lot of that falls within the finance area. So the first thing we were told to do is provision of special education related services, including, well, this was the regionalization. The question of whether special ed services ought to be regionalized. And I know that Senator McCrory is very hot on that. And there are things that are being done through RESCs and other groups to sort of establish cooperative relationships and the like. That's one area which we were asked to consider and really haven't said anything.
That's a recommendation though, right?
Well, I mean, it's
Very change, it'd be a recommendation. We did have some discussion about that. I mean, one of the challenges is the program, to create programs for perhaps 2 students, even between 2 districts, and then the student moves out of state, ages out. Those specialized programs, there's a reason that unfortunately we put the students in our places. That sustaining the staffing that you need to serve them, even in a cooperative setting, is challenging.
Is there a place to just articulate what we currently do? I mean, I think maybe that is the place to start that.
Yeah.
With what are we currently doing with our RESCs or.
And even inter-district.
You know, just even to have an articulation of current activity. Because I do think you're right that this is a very complicated scenario. It's like when they talk about like, well, we'll just regionalize trash services, right? And the state legislature goes, we're just gonna do that.
Yeah.
And then you actually like talk to cities and towns and they're like, stop it, like, we're not doing that. So, I appreciate that.
Okay.
The good senator might kind
You know,
of find it, but.
I know, one thing we did work for us is busing.
Yeah, sure.
We're sending students to ACES schools and they come to Southington sending some.
And does ACES coordinate it? Because I didn't know the rest.
No, ACES doesn't really coordinate, we gotta do it ourselves, but that would be helpful if the rest help coordinate. Some of the, you know what I mean, when students go into your school, they put it out.
So let's do a regional assessment.
We can
of
put something in
activities
there
and then
under funding.
recommendations might
All right.
be how to
All right,
facilitate.
well, let me move on.
Yeah.
The second one was the cost of providing special and related services after amount per district. That's all available. I don't think there's any reason for us to say anything about that. Third was the effect of the cost of special education has on Board of Education's MBR. Do you cover MBR at all, Trish?
No,
Yes, sir. I don't know what's exactly meant by that.
pardon me?
I don't know what exactly meant by this, the effect that the cost of special education has on the Board of Education's minimum budget requirements. It has an effect, yeah.
Yeah, answer the question, yes.
I think some districts where like a high cost kid leaves you and they want to deduct from your MBR the next year.
And we think we covered.
We covered that. I think we talked about that. how
You
it-
did.
within our-
Yes.
The fourth one was the level of state reimbursement to boards of education for special education, including the total amount of reimbursements submitted by each school district per year, and the total amount received by the school district per year, and the percentage increase or decrease per year, and total amount received by each district. Okay.
That's all available.
That's all
And our
available.
conclusion
You don't have
is it's
to
not
do
enough
that.
resources for the state.
Okay, 5. The criteria and manner by which school districts identify students who require special education, including over-identification, under-identification, and the causes and reasons for it, and we've covered that. 6, the feasibility of authorizing independent evaluators from the Department of Education or hired by parents or guardians to observe services in the classroom. We've had number 5 on that. We're not making a recommendation.
Right.
Number 7, delaying the age of classification. We're covering that. 8, special education student-to-teacher ratios prescribed by caseload policies, regulations, and formulas that affect in other states, with a focus on provisions regarding the number of special education students and the intensity of services required for such students, which I think we're sort of talked about.
We did talk about that.
We covered really head on.
Yeah, so that's in there.
Yeah.
It's in the-
Um,
Yeah.
And this is the earlier statute, the gifted and talented was also directly in there.
We referred that back to get
We
a
just did.
finding.
Yeah,
So that-
there's a whole other piece, that they wanted us to comment on, which I don't think we are prepared at this point, and that's on restraint and seclusion.
That's a,
I don't think we've discussed that enough to get it into the findings.
We talked a
And,
lot about it. There's a little bit in the behavior section.
Right,
That's the
What did
part
we
I-
say?
That was the part I rewrote. I think.
that the current statute or
Yeah,
regulations are appropriate.
there's considerable controversy. We did say,
That we needed to.
some training on maybe making sure
Train
that
and
the
reporting,
definitions were clear. The task force finds that the current Connecticut law, which is among the more restrictive in the nation, strikes with a reasonable balance, as reasonable a balance as can be expected in the first finding. And then we had another finding of, this is from the report, that the parent should be notified on the day the restraint or seclusion occurs.
and that's in legislation that was reported out on Monday, yesterday.
Yeah. So,
That's gonna be different.
There was also a discussion that Catherine brought up about,
But I think we
must do more. It just, that it does say notify. So could-
notify how.
It doesn't say, that's what our.
What if the kid's getting on the bus, your staff is leaving,
Right.
like. There's problems to that. That's why we had 24 hours.
Right. It kind of is like the DCF issues with, you have 12 hours, and that's all well and good until something happens at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But that's the law.
Yeah,
So we sit on the phone until
right.
whatever time.
well, I just think that it will come up more with recommendations, and I think we can say, we will continue to explore. And what I want to get straight, because I know people have to run for another meeting, the logistics moving forward. And I think that the 3 subcommittees, if there are things that need to be added, you'll add those in, and it will return to Andy then for the draft report.
Do you want us to actually add the language right into the draft?
you could.
Can you make sure we all have the most recent draft that we should?
Well, it's on the Google Drive, and with the comments, which I haven't removed or incorporated. And so could you look at in your sections, removing or incorporating those
Yeah, we can do
comments? And return, and clean it up, and then
Then
take it
submit
in.
one per committee, like.
What we'll do right in the Google Doc.
Right, but say like,
The-
I'll let you know, like services committee is
Is
done.
upset.
Okay.
All done. like,
And if
let
we
you
could do
know.
that in the next 2 weeks, maybe?
If we could get that done, and then the draft report sent out to the subcommittee chairs and the chairs, just to review again, okay? Make sure that it is in keeping with what we said today. And then we will send that forward, guys, and we will send a copy of the report to all of you at that point. That will conclude the findings piece. We'll get our interim report in. And I do believe that we then have to embark on a new piece, which is recommendations. But I want them to get the findings report, and I'd like them, I think they want to meet with, I think.
Well, Brian's got to stay with us.
Huh?
Brian has his hand up, but we also have an email from Jeff on that subject.
Yeah, I think he wants to, Jeff Curry wants to meet with the task force, just to talk about the findings and where we're headed.
I'm
Correct?
gonna let Brian.
Yeah, the question is whether pre-posted,
And
pre-made.
Brian has a question. Go ahead, Brian.
I just wanted to mention if the folks of the subcommittees, the leads, if they could invite me as well to each of those meetings, I would like to attend each just to be able to provide any data or information that's needed.
Okay,
What about people who are not currently on the subcommittee? Because we had a lot of people join.
I'm sorry.
People who aren't currently on a subcommittee, because we had a lot of people join after we created our subcommittee.
That's true.
That are not.
Time services,
I don't, yeah, that's what we need to decide. I'll leave that up to you guys. because-
Whoa, I don't remember who's on.
I just emailed because I wasn't on one, so I just.
I was just gonna say, I'm not on a subcommittee either.
Okay,
Why don't we
who,
get a list of who's
who
on?
is, yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the original subcommittee.
Sally and Tiffany and Catherine would not be on.
I'm
I'd
sorry.
like to be on services if that's
Okay.
possible. I'm not
Well,
on one yet.
All right, Sally. Dawn, you're making note of this. Sally on services. Okay, who else?
Catherine and Tiffany.
Tiffany, where would you like to be?
I'm thinking services.
No one likes those.
Okay, and Catherine?
Just email.
I want to do what Tiffany's doing, so I'm gonna.
And Brian.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll add to services, all right? So the three of you will be added to Alicia's group on services. Okay, and so my thing is, we'll wait to hear, we'll get this draft report done and all of that, and then we'll wait to hear from Jeff, when he wants to meet.
Well,
with
he
us.
said either pre-May 8th or post-May 8th. May 8th is the end of the session.
Can we, throw some holds in our calendars for any meetings you're thinking about?
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Well, I mean, I don't think that, my thought is when we do this process, you're gonna get a complete final report by mail and you're gonna vote yay or nay on it.
We still need a date to meet with Jeff Curry, right?
Well, no, this is a task point. This is the hearing sort of. And, I think if I'm reading his email correctly, he'd prefer that we do it pre-May 8th. I don't know why, but, you know, I think I'm gonna tell him that, you know, we hope to be ready in about a month. Right?
Yeah, they're kind of on a break right.
And then moving forward, I would really like to talk about the idea of doing surveys. I'd like to talk about the idea of having, forums, that people can come and give their views on things. That we can assemble some of this data that we don't otherwise have.
Well, I think it's important to find out what we need for support on the surveying piece. Because I think if we want to do it right, we need to survey parents, we need to survey, districts. And that requires a certain amount of resources. Because I don't think you want to do it through a Google form. I think you want to do this legitimately developing, because that is where we quantify the parental experience, where we do kind of capture some of these things that we know to be true anecdotally. Similarly with our teacher friends, we need to
Teachers,
capture that.
Paras,
But
administrators, and you know, and the Department of
Admin.
Education controls those lists. And so we're gonna need the cooperation of the Department of Education sending that out.
And I
well, you also need, a developer of a
think, I was just,
survey
that's what I mean,
because,
there needs to be resources.
you know,
dedicated.
surveys are not easy to develop.
Good ones, no, bad ones are super easy to develop.
Yeah, and, you know, so,
Sally, do you have that,
Resources
do you have the
for that.
confidence in your department to do that?
I mean, I can help with that and I have some colleagues, so.
you know, just to get a survey that's unbiased, because, you know, I get too many of them that are leading you to
Right.
one way.
Well, that's the thing is that, and we need to
There
know
might
what we
be some
want.
surveys we can look at that have been done in other states.
Yeah, that would be
I've got
great.
a list of those.
Yeah.
Because that's a really good place to start, because I think the one is if we want really meaningful data, we need to ask really good questions that are pointed at the things we want to understand. In a way that are objective and useful. Because I do think that at the end of the day, that's how we capture a fuller picture. That supports a lot of the things that I think we know have to happen. But if it does matter what that data looks like now.
And I'll tell you, it does need resources. I mean.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap to conduct real survey as well.
It is not.
But I think, and I don't want to speak for the State Department, but I think if we have an objective we're trying to achieve, we have clarity around what that data that we want to capture informs us about, there might be a way that we can find resources.
And Andy, I know that the survey is in one of the
No, it was dropped.
It's dropped because I was gonna say it's the word funded in there.
Yeah,
No, it was not funded. It was never funded.
Okay.
it was dropped. It was dropped.
It's not funded.
I
It
mean,
was-
if you're
yeah.
talking about it like a $25,000 expenditure to run a survey properly, which is not an unreasonable amount. We can shake some trees.
Well, I think we
But I
can,
think we just
we
have
need to
to
make
know
that
what we're
known
doing.
to, you know, if,
Well, in order to
because I
advance the
agree
work,
with,
We need. more
I agree with all of you. We do need surveys, but I want them to be done, you know, very, very well.
Yeah, I don't want a Google form.
Can we, establish a survey working group here? Probably after we move the report forward, but
I'll be on it.
yeah, I'd like to be on it too. And Kate, and see about how developing objective, surveys, and look at the categories you want to look
Yeah,
at.
and tie it back.
Yeah,
to what our-
okay, so who wants to be on that committee?
I'll work on it,
Okay,
because figure out how to get money.
Yeah, and that's,
okay.
I mean, we want to do parents. I suppose we could do students too, at a certain age. We could do.
Again, it's
teachers,
about knowing what we're asking.
Yeah,
and
so
what-
tie back.
Did
to-
you say yes, Kate?
Yeah, I'll.
Administrators.
100%. We need, it's really about the people who are integrated in this system. What is their feedback that would help us improve the overall system?
Yeah.
So that we
Okay.
can make thoughtful recommendations.
Right.
Okay, who
Part of
wants
the
to,
finding.
all right, we've got Sally, Stephanie, right?
No.
No.
Amy.
Amy, I'm sorry. I always get that mixed up.
I got
apologize,
it
Amy.
last time.
Kate, Alicia, Andy, and Fran. Who wants to chair it?
Somebody was not.
Who
Sally.
wants to facilitate it?
Sally.
Sally?
I mean,
would you
Sally
like
said
to?
she will.
I will
I think
share it.
Ryan has his hand raised.
Oh, Brian,
Yeah, the state's gonna be on it.
you
For
want to
the
be on
chair.
it?
Not for the chair, to be on it.
Okay.
Brian's on everything.
All right, Brian, we've got you on the subcommittee and Sally will
The only
facilitate.
thing I would say about the chair is, like, if I'm gonna be helping to develop the survey from a validity standpoint, I might not be the best chair because I would be looking at it from like a data perspective and a construct validity perspective versus what are the voices of everyone? So I don't know, I
It's
can
okay.
do it, but,
How about we get the group together and we'll work on it?
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
always, we can.
I think chair means you send out a meeting notice.
yeah,
I think that's what it means.
All right, let's get that group and we'll send you the name, Sally, and we'll get that group together. And I think we will wait for the report to go forward. We'll wait to hear from Jeff Curry, and then we'll set our meetings going forward for the recommendations. And
For the sake of the legislative process, isn't it important to note that as a part of our findings, we're doing this surveying process, that it is the next phase of our continued process, just so that there is an articulation that we as a group saw this as an important need and are going to drive
and
that
we'll move it forward.
forward.
Yeah.
I think it's
Certainly
part of
communicated.
the confusion.
We'll
Yeah,
say
I mean,
that.
I just think it's important that
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Kate.
because while they don't want recommendations or whatever, they do want to know how the work is moving.
Right.
Well, they do want recommendations, actually.
Well,
They do.
I mean-
They would like them right now, but,
Right, well,
you know.
they don't always get what they want, so.
Yeah.
it goes on.
all right. Hey, I want to thank you all. This was a great meeting. It was short, but, we really got to where we needed to, get to, and I am incredibly appreciative. I
Thank you
think.
for, thank you.
All right.
And your quiche is delicious.
All right, please, you know, if you want to take anything else with you.
We'll see whether Kate has food is good.
You know, you think, Erin? I was getting ready to follow you, Patrice. I'm not kidding, call me.
Hey, thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. Yeah,
And then we can send it to the others. if we
Yeah,
come up
that's
with
great.
a-
Did you believe? I'm getting.
I love that outfit. By the way, we really did accomplish a lot.
I have to like, your clock was really throwing me off. I was like, oh my gosh, we only have 45 minutes left.
Right,
And then I
and
realized, I looked at my computer, it was